What's going on, Wolfpack? Welcome back to another episode of Market Watch Mondays. Been a while since I had a guest, so figured we'd bring on a special guest today. So we got someone new up and comer in the industry, Alex Caruso. Caruso.
Yep, that's it. Caruso.
Okay, cool. And you know, I'm pumped to get him on. If you guys don't know me, you're new to the channel, whatever. I'm Mike. You can follow me at Mike Me Up on Twitter. Hit the thumbs up, subscribe button below to get video like this. We're mostly like a Dynasty focused show. So instead of talking to all the Dynasty old heads, I figured to get some new blood in here. Spice things up, man. Spice things up, not just for you guys, but also for me. You know, I feel like I've only been playing this shit for like 3 to 4 years, but I feel like I've been in here an eternity because I've literally have like 20, 30 leagues per year. So it's good to get some fresh faces in. But I'm gonna pass it over to Alex. You know, just let people know, where do they find you? What do you do? How'd you get in the Dynasty space? But most importantly, like, where do they go to support you? You know, that's what the channel's about, is trying to find people that are cool, that are smart, that are kind of grinding out and hustling out there, and just giving them a nice platform. Hopefully grow their stuff. And, if all things go well, you blow up and get bigger than me like everyone else. So we'll see what happens.
I'm Alex. You can find me at Alex Caruso on Twitter. Just my name, pretty straightforward, just like the NBA player, but obviously not as handsome or not as tall. I'm only an inch smaller than he is. He's 6'5", but I'm 6'4". But it is what it is. I'll hopefully get there someday. But you can find me,
man. It's a game.
It really is. It is a game of inches. But you can find me at the Fresh Fantasy Podcast on any podcast platform, and you can find me on TikTok at fresh_fantasy. TikTok's definitely the big thing. I post, 6 or 7 days a week. There's always new videos coming out every day. You can get the best fantasy information I can possibly give in 60 seconds or less. So please feel free to check that out.
Yeah, I really, I haven't gotten into TikTok, and I tried it for a little bit. And here's the problem with me. I'm lazy. So like you said it just now, like, yeah, Alex, you guys don't know, he has like 26,000 followers, more than 26,000 followers on TikTok. And he just started last June. So it pays to hustle. But you have to put out like 7 videos a day. And to me, I'm just like not on my phone enough. I'm on my phone enough, shit posting on Twitter, but I'm not on my phone enough in a presentable enough manner for enough time in the day to actually give advice. But I do think TikTok is a great platform. Like Nick, us at BDG are trying to put out more video there. You got Sal Vetri, who's an absolute legend in the YouTube content space. He started putting out stuff there, and the growth there has been insane, and like being able to monetize and all that. So you really blew up there. But like, how did that like all get started? Like, how did you get into TikTok? And then, beyond that, like, what are some helpful tips for not just people out there, but even just for me? Let's say I want to pick up a phone and make some TikTok videos. Like, what are the top 3 things you would say that you have to do well to like actually post on TikTok and gain traction?
Yeah, so I got into TikTok of June of this year. I started making fantasy content in July of 2020. And then early into like my second season creating content, I had a friend of mine suggest that I do TikTok stuff because he's like, TikTok's blowing up. They have a lot of people that are making a lot of videos. It's a quick way to get exposure. So I figured, okay, why not? Mm-hmm. So I tried it, and TikTok is a lot of trial and error. And that's something that I realized very quickly. And there's a lot of little things that you can do that can help increase viewership. But like the first thing I would say more than anything that people kept telling me that actually seemed to work is consistency on TikTok. So even if your videos are not the greatest videos of all time, the fact that you're posting them every day, people really come back to watch your videos every day. So I'd have the same people commenting every day because it's like they could expect a video from me every day around like 5 or 6 p.m. Eastern time every time. So then people would always keep coming back. And eventually I started to put videos together more. But
let me ask you before you move on. I want to ask you one point on that. So do people, like, for me, when I go on TikTok, right, it's just literally like when me and my girlfriend go to bed, I pop up my phone and just go on the For You page and scroll. Do people actually like go like to specific pages? Like you said, they actually come back to your page, or is it that because they've seen so many of your videos, like your videos keep popping up on the For You page?
I think it's just keep popping up because I think in my analytics, it's only like 3% of people are people that actually like just click on my page and watch my videos.
Yeah.
Like if you like the same, it's like the algorithm. If you like the videos every day or comment, they keep popping up. So I think it's more just that I keep popping up on everybody's pages rather than them like going to find me every single day or whatever.
Dude, the algo is actually crazy because like you don't have to like. I barely like anything. I don't like anything on TikTok. I'm just scrolling. I think that like they basically measure like how much you spend, like how much time you spend watching a video. So if you're constantly showing up, it means that people are probably like constantly watching your videos, like, at least for a good amount of time. Like what type of content do you put out there? Like I've been on your page and scrolled through a couple of things, but like what are the top, name the top 3 forms of stuff that you do? Is it like dropping a bunch of stats and then like giving your opinion, or is it like trade advice, buy low, sell high, like, or is it like more like clickbaity type stuff? Like what type of stuff do you your category does your content fall under?
It really depends. There's been a lot of different things that have popped off for me. The three things that are the biggest pop offs, I think people really like NFL news, like anything that includes a story that pertains to everybody, not just like specific. This is a buy low player, like this is a player profiler on Deontay Johnson. No, they don't want that. They want the regular news and things that like are good for everybody. It's because it's all about the most amount of people that the content pertains to. But the biggest things that I've done are like doing like secretive videos, sort of like a buy low, sell high, but I don't reveal it till the end, so no one knows, because it's all TikTok's all about watch time.
Yeah,
How
yeah,
long
yeah.
can each person? So the longer I can keep you interested without actually giving it away, kind of like a movie, so to speak, and you wait for the end of the movie to see what the ending is. That's the biggest thing. But it's all about retaining watch time. It's about how fast you can give someone the content without letting them look away. Because if I take one breath in a video, that's already 10 people that have already clicked off the video because they don't care about my breath. But if I keep talking, I keep them engaged. That's all about watch time for TikTok and how long I can keep you for every single second. So I think that's the biggest thing.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. To me, is just keeping that watch time and like making that bait. I'm not that good at that, like even though I'm on YouTube, like sometimes like, yo, you got to make your like titles more clickbaity. You can't give away the name of the titles, and I'm just like, fuck, I don't care. I'm just gonna post it. but that makes sense. Is like, you'll basically make a title that says like, like who is this like buy low candidate, right? And then you the video and you probably like drop little tidbits, and then you give your thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So like, I just did a video today, or I did a video yesterday on a buy low for David Montgomery. So my video was like, this is the biggest buy low candidate in all of fantasy football. And then first was like, this guy has a higher snap share than Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah, I got you.
Less yards than Austin Eckler. And then there's people that, oh, he's better than that guy and that guy and that guy. So you're staying until the end of the video because you want to find out who it is, even if you could give less of a shit about it. You still want to know. And that's what keeps people and gets the views going and whatever.
Yeah, that makes sense. How long are your videos usually? Like, is it 30 seconds, 60 seconds?
Yeah, I'd say the average is probably about 30 seconds. All my videos are less than 60 seconds because I found the ones longer than that people don't really listen to. Because like what could I possibly be telling you about that I need like longer than a minute to tell you in TikTok, especially when it's not a podcast where I can pause. Like TikTok is like boom, 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 boom. So I don't really have many videos. I need to like keep throwing stats at you for longer than a minute. Usually the shorter stuff works better than the longer stuff.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. I mean, for those of you guys out there, like honestly, if you're trying to break into the space, I would go TikTok. Like, I'm like an old boomer now almost, where I'm like still on YouTube doing videos and stuff like that because I'm just lazy and I can't put out that many videos. But if you're like willing to be like Alex and put out the grind and put out the hustle, man, get on TikTok, because like the discovery there is just like
Huge.
so huge. Like you could have no followers and make one video that blows up, and then you're like, you're huge, right? Is that what happened to you? Like, did you go from like, was it like a slow grind from like a couple hundred followers to a couple thousand, or did you make a couple videos that like really blew up that kind of like sent you into the moon?
It took me a while. It probably took me about a month or two of like putting videos out. And I had a couple of videos that would pop off here and there, but I was consistently gradually moving up. But the biggest thing that took me from like where I was from like 5,000 to like 20,000 in a period of 2 or 3 weeks was when training camp stuff came out. I was the only content creator, one of the only ones on TikTok that would like, I would take the biggest 3 or 4 training camp tidbits and put them in a video every day. And those videos were popping off for at least 50 to 100,000 like every single day. And I would sprinkle those in with some other video every day, and like doing 2 videos a day plus all that stuff that no one was doing was what really blew me up to where I am now.
Yeah. So you really, kind of leveraged like the first mover advantage there.
Exactly.
There's probably still a lot of opportunity. I mean, it's still very early stages.
There's so much.
Recommend all you guys out there to fuck around with that and see what you can do and see if you can kind of get up to Alex's level. Probably not, but who knows, man. Try and get out there, do your thing, see what happens, have some fun while you're doing it. That's all we can ask
for.
That
counts.
All right, let's get into the good stuff. Let's get into the football shit that people came here for. My first question I always ask every single guest that comes on this pod is, are you a film first or data first analyst?
Well, I think that by my death, I'm definitely all analytics. Like I'm a big analytics, not enough on film for sure, and that's where I get some stuff wrong. We'll get into that, but definitely I'm an analytics guy by heart. Always have been, always will be.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of most of us, coming into the space, because it's like most of us didn't play football at a high level, right? Most of us, didn't coach. Most of us aren't pro scouts, at least not when you first go into space, except for me, obviously. So numbers is so available. It's just everywhere. You got RotoViz, you got PFF, you got player profiler, all these like great resources for data that anyone with a spreadsheet and a computer can pick up and do. So, the barrier to entry there is just so low. So it's natural that like new guys like you, like me, coming into the space kind of like, cater to the data side. Whereas like the film side, it's like people hold all 22 like it's their fucking like unborn child, like they're not as willing to share it with the community. So it's a little bit different. It's harder to get there. I hope that one day, all 22 film is just out there for everyone. And then you're going to get a huge influx of talent of film guys, because I don't think you have to play football to actually really understand and break that stuff down. It's like anything, you put some time into it, you put some grind, you can kind of get there. So hopefully we get there on the film side. But yeah, for now, most guys out there like you, like me, are data guys coming in. What's your background, by the way? Like what do you do like outside of fantasy football?
Well, I'm in school full time. I'm 20, so I'm still like right in the middle of
Yeah.
college and figuring out like that. But like my major has nothing to do with fantasy football. Like I'm a psychology major. Like I
Mhm.
love learning how people work and stuff like that. But I have a minor in marketing because I took like a sports podcast internship to help
Oh, cool.
potentially get a career down the road. But
Yeah,
mainly it's psychology.
you're like the Godfather himself, Nick at BDG. He did marketing, when he was
Oh,
in
did you really?
school. Yeah, he was like a marketing guy, and now he's like a marketing whiz, and then he just like he jumped ship and then built the whole BDG brand, kind of doing his thing. So yeah, I'm sure you guys get on. You should hook up with him. I'll set you up with him. You should you guys
Please.
get together and learn some stuff. All right, 2021. So I love going back and reviewing like takes from the offseason. Like, I love laughing at myself. I love laughing at other people. I love laughing, period. But the most fun I have is laughing at myself at the bad takes. I mean, every year I put out a thread on Twitter that's like, here's my worst takes for the year. But like, I don't just do it just for laughing. I just do it, kind of to see, where I can learn, where I went wrong, like what I messed up on. So, I had some awful takes this year, Darrell Henderson, Michael Pittman, was another one I totally whiffed on, Debo Samuel and all that stuff. We'll get into a couple of them here, but like for you, let's start first with your good takes. Like if you were to be like, hey, this was like my bread and butter guy, what is one guy for you that where you were just pounding the hammer and just kind of ahead of the game on so far?
I think DeAndre Swift was definitely my forefront. I mean, people that follow me know that my page is basically a DeAndre Swift page, and
It's
like, but
true.
there was so much content I had that every single thing I could find pointed towards a success, and it's worked out pretty well so far.
Yeah.
So he's definitely my flagship guy. But my other two guys that were like literally my guys just all happened to work out, which is so rare. But it was DeAndre Swift, Jalen Hurts, and Deontay Johnson were the guys that I was the biggest on that have all done really well. And a couple other guys that I was definitely way higher than consensus were like James Conner. I had as my running back 30 this year.
Mhm.
Antonio Brown was my wide receiver 28 going into the season. And I think Nick Chubb's another one that I think I feel more right on than not. He's had some pop-off games because of the inconsistency, because of the lack of target volume. I think that I was more right on that than not so far. But those big five, I think, were definitely my favorite takes.
Yeah. I think Deontay Johnson is someone that I've been historically low on. It's so funny the story arc there, because like I was so high on Deontay Johnson coming into the league. So I'm like, James
Really?
Washington sucks. And when he was a third round pick, I'm like, I'm drafting this guy everywhere. So I got him everywhere. And then he had a decent enough rookie season, nothing spectacular. But then everyone was like, no, this guy is like the second coming. And then Matt Harmon's perception came out, and he's like, he's a route god. And then, he started climbing into that like, early second, late first round pick. And I'm like, all right, I'm cashing out because I don't really believe in this guy. And I kind of had a little bit of take lock, to be honest. And just like over the years, I was like, okay, I like Chase Claypool more. I like Juju Smith-Schuster more. But I think just now it's like, it's time to kind of like man up and just admit like he's actually just a really good player. I mean, he's getting double digit target. The volume that he's seeing is actually insane at the wide receiver position. Like there's like
Yeah.
nobody pacing out for more targets per game than Deontay Johnson, like heading back into like last year. He just, he can't stay on the field sometimes, and he drops passes, which I literally give zero fucks about, drops passes, because as you see this year, he's not dropping that many. So it's not a very sticky stat. But yeah, he's someone that's like kind of a little bit of stain on my resume. So it's good that you kind of popped up on him. Like what made you like super into Deontay coming in?
Well, I think two things. One, Matt Harmon's reception perception was the biggest thing, because I mean, he was just like unbelievable, and he was
Mhm.
only among like the elite of the elite players at like getting open in general, which is what I loved. And I also just love the volume in general. That like where Big Ben likes to throw and the type of guy that he likes to throw to, similar to Antonio Brown. I'm not saying he's Antonio Brown. I'm not saying that, but like because the volume that he was already going to get, and because of how open he was,
Mhm.
and because the Steelers had like led the NFL in pass attempts 3 out of the last 4 years going into last year, because the volume and his route running skills and the leap to year 2, those are the biggest things I believed in, and especially all that considering his price.
Yeah,
for the
yeah, and he's only 25. I always forget
yeah.
that. I go back and it's like this guy's the same. He's younger than Chris Godwin. He's like the same age as really like in that same vein, right? He's only like a 1 year older than like the I think AJ Brown's like 20. Was he 23? 20?
Yeah,
Yeah, so he's only a
exactly.
couple years younger. So the age is really not a factor. So as long as Deontay Johnson kind of stays healthy, it's gonna be a good career for him. All right, you mentioned DeAndre Swift. Like I follow you on Twitter, so I know your whole Twitter feed is basically 80% DeAndre Swift. I myself was also very, very high on DeAndre Swift coming into the season. I think I had him ranked as a first round running back in Dynasty all throughout the offseason. I think, and his ADP was like in like the second or third round. So I think I was too far ahead of my skis there. But it seems to have worked out. I do have one question for you. So, one thing that has me a little bit concerned with DeAndre Swift is he's just not been good on the ground. Like he is, I think NFL next gen rushing yards over expected per attempt. For those of you guys don't know rushing yards over expected, it's like basically for a certain down and distance in a certain area of the field, like how many yards is that running back expected to get? Because as we all know, like running backs don't have a ton of control over the yards they get. A lot of it's because of the O line, a lot of it's because of down and distance, a lot of it's because of defensive formation, stacked boxes, etc. So that's just like a good stat to kind of like separate from raw rushing yardage, which is basically based on volume to show how efficient a player is. And DeAndre Swift is at negative 1.3 something yards per attempt. So he's been bad, like, and not just bad, but like the worst in the league. So out of all running backs qualifying with greater than 10 attempts, DeAndre Swift ranks dead last in the NFL. Now, what makes him a good fantasy asset is that he's actually very good in the receiving department, and he's still getting some volume on the ground. He's getting high value touches, he's getting goal line touches. But that is concerning for me a little bit. I don't care that much about running back efficiency if you're like bad, but like in the middle bad, because like that fluctuates so often. But when you're on the very, very outskirts, it does, has my spider sense tingling a little bit. What do you think about DeAndre Swift's prospects going forward, like knowing that little piece of data?
Yeah, I think it's something that it definitely concerns me. How would it not? If you're the worst in the league at anything, it doesn't matter what it is. It's obviously going to be concerning, and if not, then you're just in take clock at that point. So I'm obviously concerned about it, but part of me also wants to. Maybe it's the take clock in me that like the only way is up if he's last, and that means like
Yeah.
you're saying the only thing you can do is get better.
Yeah.
But I think the thing is like I'm going to lean on the fact that he is going to get better, not because of take clock, but because of everything that like I was in my own head preaching about with DeAndre Swift is the prospect that he is, the comparisons for the guys that like he's been compared with and everything like that is going to improve. Like I made the big mistake like 2 years ago when Christian McCaffrey was the overall RB1. I wouldn't draft him anywhere. You know why? Because he was the worst pass blocker in the entire year before. So I was like, oh no, maybe he won't stay on the field. Like I'm not drafting him. And
Yeah.
boy, was I sorry. So I think it's one of those things that similar to the situation this year with like, okay, this Lions team won't score any touchdowns. Jared Goff doesn't throw to running backs, all those things that I know those are things out of his control where Swift, the rushing over expectation is in his control, that I'm going to keep betting on the talent and all the historical comparisons that he's had. But it definitely is concerning and it makes me a little bit more wary rather than just being like all in, like there's no chance this guy doesn't do anything. Because that's obviously a huge concern when he's dead last.
Yeah, yeah. I think I'm with you on that one. It's why I still have Jonathan Taylor as my like dynasty running back ahead of DeAndre Swift from that class. I've been a JT stan since day one, but I do think like there is some cause for concern. But like you said, man, there is room to go up. And someone like DeAndre Swift, he's got the size, he's got the receiving ability, he's got the tackle breaking ability when it comes to reception. So it's kind of just a matter of translating that. He's definitely not as good in tight spaces as he is in open spaces, and you see that in the receiving side because when you get the ball as a receiver, you're in the open field and you can like juke some guys and do a dead leg. And the infamous DeAndre Swift dead leg that leaves people, kind of crippled. But when he's in tight space, he's not as good. So I'm hoping. Here's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping that he learns some, development from Jamal Williams, the king, and then also just development in the league as a young guy going in. The Lions obviously aren't a really good team right now, so hopefully, the team gets better. And we hope. I mean, I don't think DeAndre Swift's the worst runner in the league, as his stats suggest. So we'll kind of see, but I don't think he's going to be the best either. So let's just hope that he kind of reverses to like towards the mean, towards that average. But it is something I'm going to be watching because when I did see that, I'm like, damn, that's bad. Like
Yeah.
remember how much people hated on David Montgomery? Like he's way worse than David Montgomery was as a runner in his rookie year. So it's just something to be mindful of.
For sure. And I think the other thing, if I may, real quick, is like the other thing that I have to keep in mind of is if this was like a running back I didn't like let's
Yeah.
say like this is like Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and
Yeah.
he was like worst in rushing yards over expectation, I would be out here on my podcast like, this guy's terrible. He's worse in rush yards over expectation. I would be making sure people know, but because it's Swift, I'm like glancing over it. I think that's that part of it. I do need to be more mindful of, like, if this was someone I didn't like,
Yeah.
would I be saying the same thing and singing the same praises? But there's also Swift is a much better prospect, whatever. But I think that's at least worth noting.
Yeah, I mean that's everyone. We all
Yeah.
see the stats and the things that we want to see. We all retweet. I try and really do. I really do try and take an active effort in like trying to call out shit that kind of goes against what I originally think. So like when I saw that stat from DeAndre Swift, I tweeted it right away because I'm like, well, this is like pretty interesting. And then I started looking into it more and more and more, and I was like, man, this is definitely a legit concern. And you're right. Like if this was someone that I didn't like, I would be blasting them. So we got to always try and stay in the middle and stay even keeled. So it's important to take in those stats. And that's why, honestly, I follow a lot of film people on Twitter because one, I'm not good at it. So following other people that are good at it helps me. But two, film and analytics clashes so much that I like to get into those debates and see what they're seeing that I'm not seeing. So just a good thing to do in Dynasty overall. But let's hop on to the worst takes. So I have some pretty bad takes, and I have a long list of them. What were some of your like worst takes of the offseason that have played out negatively for you so far?
Oh man, so there's a good amount of them, unfortunately, and it's like every top guy at every position at this point. So Jonathan Taylor and Austin Eckler, I had 0 shares of in redraft this year, 0
Yeah.
both of them. Austin Eckler, chronic hamstring, so I was like, I'm not in on this. Jonathan Taylor was definitely my number one worst wrong. I was just like, this guy will never play enough snaps. Marlon Mack's coming back. I just didn't see the volume being enough and the offense being enough that I felt like he had a top 3 ceiling, like he clearly has right now.
Yeah.
I was also very wrong on Tom Brady. I was like, if you're not a rushing quarterback, like what's the ceiling for you? Tom Brady 40 touchdowns last year. He was the QB8. And then Cooper Kupp, I couldn't have been more wrong about.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Cooper Kupp. Like he was like my wide receiver 18 this year, but like I had Woods above him by like 3 or 4 spots. And I was just like, this guy's never, like, he doesn't have a ceiling.
Yeah.
And then I was wrong.
But
I was wrong. And Debo. Debo is probably like my staple of like, I will never draft this guy no matter what round he falls to because it's Brandon Ayuk season all the time. And I just looked like the biggest clown on the face of the planet. That one. And the last thing, this is a stat that not many people talk about, but Marquise Brown, I was born in 2000. Okay.
Uh-huh.
The Ravens have not had a top 12 wide receiver since 1992.
Damn.
I was born in 2000. So I was like, there's no chance I'll ever draft Marquise Brown. It's been like 28 years since they had a top 12.
Was it Anquan Bolden wasn't a top 12 wide receiver in his time?
No, he wasn't.
Oh,
he wasn't. He was just outside, but that was the
yeah.
star I saw. And that was like, they're the only team like in this 2000 to not have a top 12 receiver. So
that's so crazy. And like now they have like, first, let's talk about the misses. I was with you on Tom Brady, right? I was totally whiffed on that. I was with you on Cooper Kupp, not because I hated Cooper Kupp, but I was just like, well, I don't know who's gonna be better, so I'm just gonna take Robert Woods because he's cheaper. But my mistake, and what I realized there's like, it's not like Robert Woods is like 2 rounds cheaper. He was like half a round cheaper. So like when they're that close, you're probably smarter off diversifying a little bit. And that's the one big move I did not make. So I'm with you on that one. Tom Brady is just a GOAT. What are we gonna do? He's just a GOAT. There's nothing we can do about it. But Debo versus Ayuk, I'm with you, man. I was so hard on hammering Ayuk that I was just like, and I didn't even hate Debo. I traded for Debo in a couple of spots. I drafted him in a couple of spots, but I think I just had him too far apart in my ranks, and it's not that like, I think I'll make that same mistake again because Ayuk had such a great prolific production profile as a rookie. I'm always going to bet on those guys. But having said that, because the uncertainties of Debo not playing together much, Kittle not playing together much, Trey Lance coming in, not knowing the quarterback situation, there's a lot of unknowns that I didn't really factor in, to be honest. And that was my downfall there. But luckily, I had a couple Debos and I traded for him in a couple spots. But he's my man. He's looking like just like a freight truck. That guy's a beast. I love watching Debo play. Just like the way he just trucks people is awesome. But yeah, I'm with you on a lot of that stuff between Debo and Ayuk. So it's not, you're not definitely not alone. But on the Ravens specifically, this is where I will take my main victory lap for the season, right? The entire offseason, I spent every day on Twitter just arguing with people about why the Ravens aren't a bad landing spot for wide receivers because everyone's like, oh, all they do is run the ball. They're bottom of the league. They've been a bottom of the league in terms of rush percentage, percentage of rushes in neutral game scripts, which means basically, when they have the choice to throw or pass, to throw or run the ball for like two years running, right? I think they're bottom of the league.
Yep.
And I was like, that's just not sustainable. There's too many factors that go into that, whether it's player injuries, whether it's their defense not playing as well, whether it's Lamar Jackson taking a step up as a passer, which we've obviously seen this year, whether it's them adding more talent. And honestly, I did not factor in how good Hollywood would be, but I thought they would add Rashad Bateman. I saw him as a great possession receiver they needed. That would open up the offense, right? And so that's where we are now. So it's great to see like that kind of play out, right? And the stat that you just dropped, it's kind of mind blowing to me that they haven't had one since 1992, but I guess it's expected. I mean, they haven't had that many good quarterbacks, and they've been a defensive centric team.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. It's crazy to see, man. Like I just made a couple trades for Marquise Hollywood Brown, and I wanted to go on a buying spree for him. But then I realized, like, every time I open up a team, I'm like, who has him? Like, oh, I have him. Because you know why? I was a year early. So last year,
I was the
like,
same way.
I was a year early, and I was like, Hollywood, he didn't smash in year one, but he had all the peripherals that kind of hinted that he's going to do really, really well, and then he flopped, right?
Exactly. I was the same way.
He flopped.
Exact same way.
And luckily I couldn't trade him because nobody wanted him. And then he like picked it up towards the end of the year. I'm like, we got something here. And then Rashad Bateman came in. I'm like, well, I think both guys can coexist on the team because they're both good players. And I just held on. And then, just by virtue, like, honestly, some of the best trades that you make in Dynasty are the ones that don't get made because you just sit on them and people save you from yourself. And then you just wait.
They really do.
Patience gets there.
They really do. It's crazy how that works. Like you said with Hollywood, like I was a year early with you. Then he started popping off at the end of last year, and it was like the week after I drop him, and then he goes on a 7-game touchdown streak, and I was like, oh, here we go. But like you, I mean, it's crazy how often that there's trades you try to make or a guy you so desperately try to get rid of in fantasy.
Yeah.
And then no one wants him because they're like, they agree with you. They're like, I'm not taking him. And then all of a sudden it's Marquise Brown. He's a top wide receiver in fantasy. That's just the unfortunate part of the game. But it's hey, I'd love to see it for your dynasty teams.
Yeah, it's great, man. I have them everywhere in dynasty. The same thing with Darrell Henderson. I was in on Darrell Henderson as a rookie, and then I'm a Cam Akers stan. So as soon as Cam Akers got drafted, I'm like, all right, well, this guy's dead. Right?
I'm the same way.
Yeah. And then Cam Akers got freaking injured. That was the saddest day of my life so far. That was like the most emotionally attached I've been to like a star athlete going down injury, because like I loved Cam Akers when he was in college. So as soon as when he was in college, I was like, dude, this is the dude. And then he got drafted in the second round. I'm like, all right, this is the dude. And he had his rookie season. I'm like, all right, this is prime breakout year. And then he got Achilles injury. So I hope he comes back. I wish him a speedy recovery. A lot of people think he's dead, but I don't think we have enough data to say that he's dead. The question is, does he come back at 100%, 90%, 80%? That's really the question, that we're waiting on with Cam Akers. Especially you're a Cam Akers fan as well.
Oh, dude, the only reason, like, before Swift was a thing for me, I was Cam Akers. Like, Cam Akers, my running back that I wanted in every single league. Like, I loved him so much, and I was just gonna say, like, Darrell Henderson has been phenomenal, or Darrell Henderson has been phenomenal this year. Yeah. Imagine if I'm always playing the like going to bed at night and I can't sleep because what would Cam Akers have been if Darrell Henderson was this good on this offense? Like, what would Cam Akers have been? Because he was just better in a prospect in like every category. That's why I also got Darrell Henderson wrong, because it was a thread that Drew Ozenchuk did on like Sony Michel being better than Darrell Henderson. Last year.
Classic
Drew. I love Drew. Drew is like, I feel like Drew is as accurate as any analyst. So I was like, if Drew says it, I believe it. So no more Darrell Henderson for me. Sony Michel season, and I feel like a little bit of a clown now, but I will usually, Drew's right a lot more than he is wrong.
Oh, so for sure. Drew's a friend of the channel, good friend of mine, fellow Canadian. Yeah, he's definitely got, in my opinion, some of the best prospect breakdowns. I love the threads he puts on Twitter. He gets a lot of hate all the time. Like, his Kenny G, anti-alpha, all the New York Giants fans flooded in and hated on him, and look at where he's at now. So yeah, if you guys don't know Drew, go follow him on Twitter at DFBeanCounter on Twitter. He's just a fantastic follow, and he's got a Patreon as well. He's been on the show before, so I'm sure fans know him. But let's move on to 2021 rookies. They're not really rookies anymore, but in my eyes are still rookies. I like to look back again at my rookies. What did your first round super flex rookie look like before the season, and then what does it look like now? So what are your top picks, and then how have they changed?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know why I think I missed that one in my show sheet. That's like my question I don't have any notes for. But like I think the biggest movers, like I think that like it was weird because like I was a lot higher on like Zach Wilson so far and Trevor Lawrence. I think those guys are both good buy lows, but they were guys that I just loved as prospects, and they were just like a lot better than I thought. Like I felt like I liked them a lot more than other people did, and other people were more concerned than I was. So those guys
Mhm.
have gone down a little bit for me. I think Rashad Bateman was someone that I was wrong about at the beginning that I would have a lot higher now. I actually don't do any Superflex rankings. I've never played Superflex to this point, and shame on me for that. But I haven't gone out because I'm still new to fantasy football. This is only like my 5th year ever playing, and like the third year I've ever played more than like 2 leagues. So I'm still new to that aspect. So I'm sorry. I wish I could speak a little bit more on the movers.
No, that's okay. I mean, first of all, get on the super flex stuff. Just try it out. I mean, it's
Should
new.
okay.
Like, it's like it feels overwhelming, but like honestly, it's not that much harder if you understand like game theory and economics. Like all it does is it adds more trade assets. It adds a scarcity dynamic to that position. It makes more trade pieces that more valuable than they would be in single quarterback. So I
Okay.
highly recommend. You got questions? Just feel free to DM me. But let's go and get into some of the big players, right? Like Jamar Chase, right? Jamar Chase was a generational prospect to me, right? To me, he was the most safe, like can't miss prospect that we've seen in a long time, and a lot of that's because of the peripherals, his metrics, his and then also the film. So I love it when the numbers in the film agree, right? With the exception of like the outskirt film bro who thinks Jamar Chase like can't run routes that nobody cares about anymore. With the exception of those guys, like for the most part, well respected film analysts and numbers guys agreed that Jamar Chase was, that dude, right? Now we've seen him. I did not expect him to be this good, right? And I was super high on Jamar Chase. I thought he was in a tier by himself. Like I thought Devonta Smith, Rashad Bateman, everyone else was way behind him. But he has absolutely blown up the NFL. I find myself watching Jamar Chase and thinking, this is the most exciting player, most exciting wide receiver that I've seen outside of Tyreek Hill, right? Tyreek Hill is one of my favorite players to watch. Jamar Chase is like that, but like stronger and bigger because it feels like it's just an inevitability every single week that he's going to pop up for a big play. Obviously, last week they missed on a couple big connections, but Jamar Chase is that dude. I loved him in redraft. I love him in Dynasty. Sadly, I didn't get any of him in Dynasty because he was so expensive. But right now, he's probably being touted by a lot of people as the Dynasty wide receiver one at that cost. Are you in? Are you out? Do you think he's worth that cost? Do you think he's not worth that cost? Who are some other guys that you think might be better than him or not as good as him or kind of like in that range? What are your thoughts on Jamar Chase?
I think he's like a buy. If there's anyone that is willing to sell him for just about any price on the planet, I'm willing to do it because I think Joe Burrow going into sorry, my mic's falling my mic everywhere. I'm so excited about Jamar Chase. Joe Burrow is one of my favorite QB prospects coming in. I loved everything about him. And then you combine that with someone like Chase. I mean, if anyone is willing to sell him, I'm willing to buy him. I think he's the dynasty wide receiver 1 or 2. The only guy that I think competes with him, I think, is someone like Justin Jefferson. Like if they had the same pass volume, I'd have those guys pretty similarly. But Jamar Chase, by like you said, every film guy, every analytics guy, especially Drew, once again was like Jamar. And like, I didn't expect him to be this good this year because I was like, okay, he hasn't played football in a year. Like, what are the chances this guy walks into the National Football League and lights it up like this? I figured very low because he didn't play last year. Like if he came in 2019 or 2020, like when Justin Jefferson did, maybe I would have felt similarly, but not like he has been this year. He's been absolutely unreal, and I love to see it. So like I said, I think that he's as good as any wide receiver prospect. And when film guys and analytics guys agree on guys like that, I feel like you have to go buy them. And especially for the talent that he is, the age that he is, and the QB that he's playing with that's still ascending. If anyone's willing to sell him, I'm definitely willing to buy him.
I mean, I think the issue you run into there is not many people are willing to sell them
Yeah.
unless you pay the absolute
Exactly.
iron price. So for me, sadly, as much as I love watching Jamar Chase play, and I think he is that dude, I just never find myself paying too much for wide
Yeah.
receivers. I also play mostly super flex, so a little bit different from you, where just quarterbacks and running backs just are valued way too highly for me. So like to me, like if I had to choose between a Jamar Chase and a Jonathan Taylor, I'm always going to choose a Jonathan Taylor. But if you look at the masses, you look at like Keep Trade Cut and all these guys, I think he's gotten to a point where he's valued above a Jonathan Taylor. So I think you're trying to acquire Jamar Chase. It's probably going to cost like 3 firsts plus. And I never pay 3 firsts for any player because it's just too much. If you think about like your draft picks and all your capital, right, all your assets in Dynasty League as like different baskets of things, right? A different basket of security. So like if you compare it to like real life, I invest in some equities, I invest in some Apple, some Facebook, some Google or whatever, right? And those are all big stocks. But if I put all of them into one, then I'm only susceptible to that risk. So I'm very, very highly leveraged. Whereas like if I have like 3 first round picks, I could pick next year's class, like next year's Traylon Burks. He's not Jamar Chase, right? He probably won't be Jamar Chase, but he could be, a decent enough guy and 2 other guys to go along with him. So I kind of play the diversification game. So whenever the wide receiver gets the wide receiver 1 overall, for me, I'm looking to trade out and get like,
I
get
like that.
another young wide receiver plus a future first, another stud young wide receiver, not just like a pleb, but like another stud young wide receiver plus like a future first. If I could trade Jamar Chase for like, Hollywood Brown plus like 2 firsts, I bet you can do that in your leagues, in a lot of dynasty leagues. I would do that trade.
Yeah,
Personally.
and I'd be willing to make it with you because I think one thing that's so underrated about the aspect of trading that like I get crapped on for all the time on TikTok and whatever is like all you need is one guy to believe or one guy to overpay. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like in your league, there could be 11 other guys, but all you need is that one guy that's willing to go all out more than anyone else. Like myself, I'm like, I'll pay any price for him. You just need to find that one guy in your league that's going to way overpay and that like is a Bengals fan or like loves Jamar Chase more than anyone else. Like his grandpa went to LSU. Like find that guy in the league, and then that guy is willing to like pay the price for you. So I think in that aspect, with guys that are always the one at their position, there's always at least one person in your league that's willing to pay that gargantuan price. And I think I
Yeah.
agree with you. That's when you have to take advantage.
Yeah, the Godfather offer that we're
The
all looking for.
Godfather offer, exactly.
The one that changes and reshapes the destiny of your team. Those are the offers that we live for, man. I live for those offers. There are teams where, I remember Davante Adams in when he was like 25, 26 years old or whatever. Like that year, like mid-season when he popped off or whatever, I
Yeah.
traded him for like 4 first-round picks, right? And at the time, everyone's like, "Oh, that's crazy, it's crazy, it's crazy." And those 4 picks that I got reshaped my team forever. So now in that league, that was one of the first years I played in a dynasty league, and it was a super flex, and it was a 14 team, and it was a bankroll league, so it was like a salary league, right? So that I was a total noob, right? So my team was shit, in that first couple of years. But after I made that trade, like now I've reshaped that team over the years, and now I'm like first place. So those types of moves are what kind of like changes your team, forever. So always look for those types of moves because like there's no player really has that much of an impact on a team. No one player can have that much of an impact as like to warrant like 3 plus 4 first round picks because there's just too much that you can acquire with those picks later on. Like those 4 first round picks, if you look at this year, it could have turned into like a Najee Harris plus a Rashad Bateman plus a Devonta Smith plus a Justin Fields. You know what I mean? So like there's so many things that have to go right for you to go all in on that player. So I'm usually on that, risk averse side. But you can't go wrong. Jamar Chase is a generational prospect. He's looking like a generational player, looking like the best wide receiver prospect we've ever seen. So I'm excited to see how he develops. Another player that I think is very controversial. He was controversial before the draft, and he's someone that Drew didn't like. So this will be a good test of your Drew loyalty. Is Najee Harris? So Najee Harris, we heard a lot about his age, right? People didn't like that he's 23 years old. And I tweeted the other day, look, I get it. He's a little bit older than what you like. He's 2 years above the legal drinking age, and we like our running backs barely legal. That's what we say in Dynasty. But for me, it's like he has a lot of volume, and I get the concerns, right? Drew said, good players retain volume and bad players don't. For me, at running backs, a little bit more tricky, right? If you're like really really bad, if you're like Kalen Balaj and like if you're really, really bad, right, you're not going to retain volume. But if you're kind of operating in that middle zone, right, and you have the draft capital and you're putting up okay production, and from an NFL perspective, like you're kind of getting the job done, I don't think his volume is really going anywhere. So for me, when it comes to Najee Harris, in the case of ageism, like, which side do you stand on? He's right now ranked as a top 5 dynasty running back, right? Are you buying at that price? Are you selling at that price? Where are you at in that?
I'm kind of in the middle. I'm definitely not a buyer, but I'm definitely not a seller. Like I'm not like Drew, where I'm like this guy. Like I'm not saying Drew's like I'm not hating on Drew here, but like if I'm like he's a sell, like he's a bust, whatever. Like I don't necessarily agree with that. I like what you said was where like as we see frustratingly so often, like the NFL perspective matters more than the fantasy perspective. They're not looking at rushing yards over expectation and saying, okay, Najee Harris, like see ya.
Yeah.
Because you were a first round pick and your rushing yards over expectations bad. That's not how it works, unfortunately, for us fantasy managers. So I think because the volume, but I also think because the team that he got drafted on, the Steelers, they love their workhorse running backs over the last decade. So
Yeah.
if Mike Tomlin is still the coach, which I expect him to be as long as Najee Harris has value, I think Najee Harris is probably going to be a top 5 dynasty running back, or right. I'd have somewhere in that 4 to 8 range at this point. somewhere like there. I don't know if I have an exact rank off the top of my head. I think he's better than the people that think he's going to be a bust, but I don't think he's as good as the people that are saying that this guy should be a top 2 or 3 running back in that class. I'm more in the middle. I see the arguments for both sides, hence why I'm in the middle.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. It's kind of like, if you look at Zeke, like he's been performing at negative rushing yards over expected for like, years now. But it doesn't matter because he has a team that's committed to the run. He's a team that's committed to him, and they're willing to feed him. And even at the pain and expense of all of us who want to see Tony Pollard go in there and blow shit up, we don't, because that's what the team does. So I think understanding that part of it is important. I think the biggest debate is like Najee Harris versus Javonte Williams. I love Javonte Williams. Like I think he's a fantastic player, right? I think when you look at his peripherals in terms of his missed tackles forced per attempt, he's crushing. He's absolutely blown out of the water. We saw that in college, and that's one of the more transferable traits is like how running backs create for themselves is forcing missed tackles. And the hot debate is like Najee Harris versus Javonte Williams. Like, who do you prefer? And I see on Twitter a lot of smart folks like Drew included. He prefers Javonte over Najee. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but like for me, it's like you're hoping that Javonte's missed tackles force translates into the insane volume that Najee Harris has, whereas like Najee already has it. And like if you look at stickiness at running back, volume is more sticky than almost anything, like yards per carry, efficiency, whatever. If you get a lot of volume 1 year, typically you get a lot of volume the second year. So this is a tricky one for me, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Like Najee Harris for Javonte Williams, who would you rather have right now in Dynasty if you had the chance?
I think as long as my team isn't fully contending this year, I would say Javonte, because Melvin Gordon's contract expires after this year. I don't expect them to re-sign them. And I'm hoping they're going to see the talent in Javonte Williams plus the draft capital and everything else like that in between. And they're going to say like, this is our guy. Do I think he's going to get Najee like 90% of the snaps next year and like the RB1 in fantasy? No, I don't. But I would definitely lean on Javonte because I like his prospects better. And only because Melvin Gordon's contract expires, and I'm going to hope that the Broncos make him the guy. Because I mean, not only in like you said, like the missed tackles forced per attempt, like it seems like this year in PFF and everything like that, like Javonte is the top of like every single category you could possibly imagine. But the thing I also like about him that I think I would slightly prefer him over Najee is I think that his passing volume that he's gotten this year, even with Melvin Gordon, is better than I expected. And I mean, how people talk about him, everything like that. Maybe I'm a little bit too excited about it. I think I'd slightly go Javonte, but I'm not in the range where I'm like, it is Javonte and nothing else. Like, no, I'm not like that because I think the volume for Najee is definitely there. I would have them pretty close to each other, but I would definitely take Javonte slightly because I think he has a higher ceiling with his potential volume and the prospect that he is.
What do you think that ceiling is for Javonte? So like right now, we look at Najee, it's probably like 80 to 90% snaps. He's getting like 80% of the carries on the ground, and he's like 50 something targets, right?
Yeah.
So he's getting Le'Veon Bell workload, basically, is what he's getting, right? So if let's say Melvin Gordon leaves, I agree with you. Like I love the prospects of Javonte Williams. I think when Melvin Gordon leaves, he might get the reins, or there's a chance like they bring someone else in. Because like, when's the last time Broncos had like a true workhorse, like a bell cow?
It's been a long time. Probably
been a long time. And part of that's because of talent, right? They had Royce Freeman, wasn't very good. They had Philip Lindsay, who was definitely not a bell cow. So that could definitely be a part of it as well. But we haven't seen it yet. So there's a lot of question marks there for me. So if I had to get off of Najee, right, I would, to pivot into Javonte Williams, who I do love, I would have to get something on top. And
I agree.
I don't know if that's a first round pick. I don't think many people are willing to pay, because I think like you, everyone's thinking like, yeah, he's going to be that guy. And to get Javonte, you basically have to already pay that price, which is tricky for me. I hate prepaying a full price for someone. And that's what you do. I think if you take Javonte Williams over Najee Harris, because you're saying you're projecting that volume there. You're projecting that stuff there. There's still a chance, as idiotic as it might be, there's still a chance they keep Melvin Gordon. If they do, I'll lose my shit. But there's that tiny bit of chance. So for me, it's about managing the risk. Like what would you like if someone gave you let's see, if someone offered you, if you had Najee Harris, someone offered you Javonte Williams for a second round pick, that would be an instant accept for you?
Ooh, I don't know. I really don't know, because I don't know if I could take that, because like you said, I don't know how well I'd want to like if it was like Melvin Gordon was saying right now, like Javonte is the greatest running back of all time. get paid somewhere else. Sure. But like we saw this year with AJ Dillon, like all the people that were probably buying a year too early on AJ Dillon, they're like, Aaron Jones is going to be too expensive. There's no way they're going to re-sign him. We'd re-sign our center instead. Ha ha ha. That didn't happen. You know, they re-signed Aaron Jones. So all that AJ Dillon value goes to crap. So I would not be, I think it would probably have to be Javonte in a first for me just because of the unknown. And like you said, like we get frustrated so many times where like not every running back we love just gets the dream workload their second year when everything points to like they should be, because all they have to do is to not sign like a Jamal Williams or someone like that. It's going to take away enough work that'll cap his value at least a little bit. So I think it would probably take a second and like another lower tier asset or maybe a first. But I think like Najee's going to be the guy for the next couple of years. So I don't, like you said, because of the projecting what would I want versus like what it's actually going to be, I think I would need a little bit more than a second.
Yeah. Okay. So you're on the Najee side, but you do love Javonte Williams, and I agree. I agree. Look, I love Javonte Williams as a prospect, and if I can kind of get that little bit of juice, especially like you said, if I'm on non-contender, right, get that little bit of juice on top to pivot into Javonte, I think that's definitely a solid move. I just want to cover the QBs real quick. So this rookie class, coming in, it looked like one of the best classes we've seen in a long time. It's been underwhelming so far, with the exception of Mac Jones, I think, who's really outproduced what everyone, including myself, had thought for him. But Justin Fields had a brutal start, and as shitty as Matt Nagy is, I've said Matt Nagy is like one of the worst coaches for many years now. Part of it still has to fall on Justin Fields. He did not really step up to the plate until this latest Monday Night Football game, where he did ball out on the prime stage against one of the better defenses in the Steelers. But for you, who are you attributing the disappointment so far? Do you think it's all Nagy? Do you think some of it's Fields? Do you think it's a lot of it is Fields? Like, and what did you see in that Monday Night Football games? What do you think about his prospects going forward? Are you a buyer now of Justin Fields after seeing that Monday Night Football game, or are you still a little bit hesitant?
I think it's definitely a lot on Nagy, but not as much as people make it out to be. I mean, again, I keep saying people make it out to be because like I think everyone loves to overreact at least a little bit. I think some of it's on Fields, but also the reason that it's on Fields in my mind is because like Monday Night Football was the 7th game this guy's ever started, playing in a new system, coming out of college, and like everything is new for him. So I think like that's more the fact that it's on Fields in the sense that like he's still figuring it out. That's what I'm saying on Field. I'm not saying he's a bad prospect or anything like that. I think it's just purely he is still figuring it out because he's 7 games into his career. And the fact that the last 2 games that he's played, I think, have been a lot more promising than the first 5 starts, really make me optimistic about his prospects already with Nagy. And when Nagy goes and hopefully they get a new coach, someone like whoever it is that's a more offensive minded coach, maybe get him a couple more weapons. Like I like the upside with Fields. I think that for better or for worse, Mike, like I think that I fall in love with the Russian quarterbacks because I love their potential, whether it's Lance, Fields, Jalen Hurts, Kyler Murray, all those guys. Like I love the Russian QB upside and how high that is. So for that reason, and because I think that Justin Fields is a really good prospect, I'm definitely going to be buying the dip on him because like I said, is like he's only 7 games into his prospect and he's probably going to be a lot better this next year than he is this year. And I think I'm willing to buy the people that are still a little bit unsure right now.
No, I agree with you. Look, I think we lack patience when it comes to rookie quarterbacks, especially, I tweeted about Zach Wilson today. People gave Sam Darnold 3 years making excuses for this guy because he had Adam Gase as a coach. And we're already ready to write off Zach Wilson for Mike White, who is a random dude, just another guy. He might be Tom Brady. Sure, he might be Tom Brady. He could be. But chances are he's not, because Tom Brady's aren't falling out of trees, because otherwise every team would have a Hall of Famer, right? So I think it's crazy. Same with you. I think we need patience. Fields was someone that needed development, right, coming out of college as a passer, and we're seeing him grow, right? So let's stay patient with Fields. I'm with you. I'm definitely, if people are panicking in your leagues and trying to get rid of Fields, for a first round pick plus a second round pick or something like that, I would definitely do that. Or even for an early first round pick in 2022, I would give that up for Justin Fields in a heartbeat, because I think the prospects of Justin Fields is a lot better than what's coming down the QB pipeline. So for those of you guys in Superflex leagues, make sure you stay on top of that. So I like that. I like where your approach is there. I want to talk a little bit in the last few minutes here about in-season Dynasty strategy. So I know you're new to Dynasty, and that's fine. I mean, I'm only been here for like 3-4 years as well, and you'll learn quickly. But like, it's halfway through the season now, right? In your Dynasty league, are you contending? Are you looking more towards the future? Like, where are you at?
So I actually just decided to, we'll actually get it. I'm already kind of skipping a question a little bit, so I won't say too much. But like the team that I do have is definitely one that I decided to tear down a little bit because I was
Mhm.
looking at my team compared to other teams, and I was like, I just don't think I can contend in the next 2 to 3 years. So I was like this is the first year of this like dynasty league. Like people are just kind of getting into it. There's some newer dynasty players, so I was willing to sell a lot of guys that are a little bit older and keep some of my main prospects, but like
Yeah.
also rebuild and really to try to get a lot of draft capital because like for me, it's either ring or no ring.
Okay, yeah.
So
So I mean, yeah, that kind of goes into my next question. Like I call it maxi maxers and mini minners. So what I mean by that is, if you're a contender, like are you pushing all your chips in and going full pedal to the metal? And then when you're rebuilding, like you are completely tearing down. And that's like where I like to live. I like to live on the extremes, right? And a lot of good dynasty players, they don't like to do that. They like to constantly be like in that middle zone and always have a chance at winning. For me, if I see it, and I like to pull the plug early on my teams, just because I think there's a lot of benefit to that. You get like for you, for example, I'm assuming because they're all new dynasty players, you're getting a lot of value, as you're trading out of those veterans, and we can talk through some of those trades. But there's a lot of benefit to being first and being on the extremes, right? In Dynasty, you don't want to be in the middle. You always want to be first or you want to be last. And if you're first, that's obviously the most optimal outcome. But if you're not first and you don't think you're going to get to first or have a great shot at getting to first, you tear it down. You want to become last. And don't get me wrong, like it doesn't mean that like people view that as like bad. It's like, oh, like you're giving up. You think you have no shot at winning. That's not it at all. Like it's not that I'm saying I know I have zero chance of winning, because there's always a chance, but I'm trying to push my chips in to the highest probability plays, because the more you push your chips in on high probability plays, the more value you'll gain in the long run, and the more money hopefully you'll make over the long run. Because if you're constantly pushing your chips in when you're on teetering on the edge, like if things don't fall your way, you set yourself back like multiple years. That's the issue with kind of flirting with the middle. So it's good to hear that you're also a maxi maxer, kind of like myself. But what are some moves you're making in that league?
So there's a lot of different things. So I gave up Dalvin Cook for 3 firsts,
Mm-hmm.
and I forget someone else
That
as
was
a
before the
prospect
news, I assume.
before the
Yeah,
news. Like
dodged the bullet.
2 weeks ago that I started making some big deals. I gave away Antonio Gibson and a couple for 2 firsts and a couple other prospects. I'm trying to think what else I made. This is a couple weeks ago that I really decided to just anything that like was not young. I
Yeah.
was ready to kind of just destroy in value. So I got Antonio Gibson for 2 firsts and 2 seconds. I got Dalvin Cook for 3 firsts and like Emmanuel Sanders.
Like you
Uh,
traded them away for those
traded them,
picks.
traded
Yeah,
them
yeah.
away. And then the last one, I got Joe Mixon for 2 firsts, 3 seconds, a fourth, Emmanuel Sanders, and a third.
Cool.
Um,
So, and those are, I'm guessing that's a one QB league because you say you don't play super flex,
one
right?
QB league, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So the reason why I say that is for the viewers out there, like, if you're playing a one QB league,
Yeah.
sometimes those firsts are more like seconds and those seconds are more like thirds because there's no quarterbacks to push up the value. So that's why, people will hear that on my channel and they'll be like, you totally freaking destroyed everybody. And you
Yeah.
still probably came out, I would say you came out on top with a lot of people, but you have to make that adjustment in your mind. So it's important. Yeah. So Dalvin Cook before the news for 3 firsts to a contender feels like a pretty realistic return, because that could be like maybe 2 firsts in a super flex league, or like a first in a couple seconds. So, but I do like what you're doing. So you're commanding that, and you're basically going to dominate those drafts, because this is what I like. This is why I like tearing down,
Yeah.
because if you tear down those aging vets and you get like 3, 4. How many firsts do you have now in the next year's class?
Yeah. So if I may, I mean, so next year's class right now in 2022, I have 5 firsts. In
Mhm.
2023, I have 4 firsts so far. And in 2024, I have 4 firsts.
Yeah, so
And
that's all you need, right? Like
yeah.
that's all you need to control and dictate the flow of a draft. And that's what I love to do. Like I like having 4 or 5. But I'll say this, the one mistake that I see people make, not the one, but one of the mistakes I see people make is they get 4 or 5 and they get the itches and like I'm gonna go get like 7, 8, 9, right? And they want to do that, but just don't do that. And I'll tell you why.
Okay.
The way the market dynamic works in a rookie draft, you need other players at the table to play,
Yeah.
right? If you are if you have 8 to 9 first, that means there's no one else to deal with you, right? But if you have 4 or 5, you can still always ensure you land your guy and navigate for value. So you can trade back for a second round pick, trade back for a future first round pick. That's how you keep stocking the iron bank. If you do this, if you execute this correctly, you're never going to run out of first round picks. So here's what happened. 2022, you're going to be sitting on the clock. It's going to be like 1.03 or whatever, right? And a running back is on the clock and someone wants him. they're going to give you their late first round pick and they're going to give you their future first round pick. So you just turn that first round pick into 2 first round picks. And if their team flops and that rookie busts, then you're sitting on another early first round pick. But if let's say you had 8 to 9 first, right? And you're on the clock 1.03, someone wants that pick. The only way they can trade for it is with a player. If they don't have a player that you like, they can't get it, right? And they can't move up to try and get that player. So you effectively by getting a total monopoly on the market, you effectively reduce your price and you reduce the amount of partners you can trade with. So it's very detrimental to your trading prospects. And that's one thing that I don't think people understand or stress enough. Like when I go to corner a class, I will never have more than 5 to 6 first in that class, assuming it's a 12-team league, because I want other players at the table with me. And that's the key. And that's why I keep it that way.
That's so good to know.
Yeah. So you're in a good spot, right? 4 to 5 first. That's beautiful because you're going to control that draft. You're going to navigate it. You're going to get all the value. And by the time that people realize what they gave you, it's going to be too damn late because if they want to play in the game, they're going to have to pay the price. And that's what you're going to be able to do with the draft. So I think, it's good to recognize that early on, right? Because now you have all those first. There's no more market. If someone else wants to rebuild, they're gonna have to come to you for first, and you're not gonna sell them because you don't need the veteran players. And then when you are ready, right? Let's say 2022 comes along, you trade away some of those firsts for veterans, you get more first, and then 2023 is the class that you want to bank on because that's where all the running backs are, and you flip your team into contender. Then you're sitting pretty, and you can go and buy veterans because you have all the 2024 first too, and you can buy veterans for a discount and really round out your team. So you're gonna be in a good position. So it's fun, man. Dynasty, I know you're new to it, but
I
that's
love
the
it.
dynamic. You're going to get addicted to it and you're going to join more and more leagues. And the more leagues you play, it really comes with practice, right? Like I'm like a preach what you do type of guy. Like I'm not really like a content creator to be a content creator. I'm a content creator just talking about shit that I do. So like if I fuck up on a pick, I fuck up on a player, like I've basically done that in a real league. So that's where a lot of my practice comes from and just seeing how things play out. And you'll love it because you're like a psych major, right? So, a lot of that like dynamic that I'm talking about, that's like just like reading people. People want to be in the rookie draft. That has never changed since the beginning of fantasy leagues. Everyone gets rookie fever. Everyone overpays, myself included, when it comes to rookies. So the people that sit there with the keys, like you're just gonna cash out. It's gonna be beautiful. So you're gonna enjoy it, man. It's gonna be your first rookie draft is gonna be the most exciting thing. I promise you. It's a different thrill.
I can't wait.
Yeah, so it's gonna be awesome. Last question before we hop off here. Who are so we talked about Deontay Johnson already, but who, in terms of buy candidates, who are a couple of your top like sell candidates in Dynasty, guys where you're like, it's time to get out. It's time to get out. And then don't give me like shitty guys that like people want, because I hate that. People on Twitter go like, freaking you gotta sell, Cordell Patterson. You gotta sell Julio Jones. Like, dude, the sell on those guys fucking, they whiffed like 3 years ago, right? Let's talk about sell candidates that are good, like good players that you should sell that people want.
Yeah, I think one of the sell candidates that I'm definitely willing to sell that has not really dropped off that much in terms of he's good every single year is someone like Zeke Elliott. I think he's a year or two away from potentially going down, so I'm willing to sell on him at least a little bit. I hope that's not a crappy candidate.
No, that's not because Zeke is someone, I think people soured on him, right? A little bit in the offseason, right? Because Tony Pollard was so exciting to watch, and he still is. But he came back and he's done pretty good this year, right? He's kind of like bounced back a little bit this year. So he's someone where you can get. I just paid for Zeke actually. On a contending team. I paid a first round pick and a second round pick in super flex draft. But yeah, you're right. Like I think that's a great sell candidate. Someone that has value still that people want, and you can sell them to contending teams, right? Now is the time. Contenders are going to get into arms races, so Zeke is a great candidate to put out there.
I think another guy that I definitely like to sell. I mean, he's 28, so it's not like this guy's like dropping off anytime soon. But I don't think his value will ever be higher at this point as someone like Cooper Kupp that believes that he's still like ascending and he's going to be better. Just because the prospect that he is not. Cooper Kupp is probably going to be a top 12 wide receiver for the next 5 or 6 years. But there might be someone like you said with Jamar Chase that is willing to go all in on them because they're a contending team. They feel like they're going to win and they're willing to give up everything for him. I think he's also an interesting give up. Another guy that's this is a tough one for me, but I think George Kittle is someone worth giving up for at least a lower pick because I think that he's still so good that people are willing to bet on him. But he has struggled with injuries the last 2 years. I'm not a believer in the whole injury prone thing, but I think because of the uncertainty with Trey Lance, because Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk, I think are so talented, I think that could hurt George Kittle's ceiling a little bit. And he's still of the age that people are still willing to pay a lot because he's still in his prime and he's finished top 3 twice in fantasy. So I think he's an interesting sell candidate as well.
I think that's a really good one. And I want to cover that one a little bit. Like George Kittle is someone that I've kind of struggled with in my rankings. Like he was my undisputed like dynasty tight end one for a long time, right? But there are question marks around Trey Lance. Like, you know, when Trey Lance came in, obviously, you know, very limited sample, but we don't know what's going to happen there. We know that Deebo Samuel is fucking balling, right? We know that Brandon Ayuk, we don't know. We think that Brandon Ayuk is very talented and is going to come back. And he finally had a game that gave us hope, right? A couple games together. But there probably isn't enough in that offense to make sure all three stay fed, right? And George Kittle, like you said, is in his prime. Tight end is different. Tight end is different than wide receiver. 28-year-old tight end has a long time to go still. So he could be in his prime for, look at Travis Kelce. You know, he's 32 years old, right? So I think this is a great one. And, you know, George Kittle, the tight end landscape is so dirty and nasty. Like you stick your finger in there and it's like, it's like you're sticking your finger in a turd. Like, you know, you'll know this, like, you know, the TikTok videos where they prank people and they make it feel like you put your finger in like up your dog's butt or some shit. Like it feels like that, right? With the tight end landscape, right? You know, there's some young emerging talent in Kyle Pitts. What would be a trade for you on George Kittle? Like, if you traded George Kittle for TJ Hawkinson plus, what would that plus be?
Ooh, that's an interesting question. I would see, like, I'm always willing. I think first round picks are so risque, if I may. No one wants to give up their first, but like if I see a bad team that has like a high second, and I think that might be right at the top of the second round, I would do Hawkinson plus like a top of the second pick where I know this team's not going to get much better, and I can still get a guy at like the 13th, 14th, 15th pick. I'd probably be willing to do something like that because of Hawkinson's age.
Yeah, I think that's a very reasonable trade. TJ Hawkinson for George Kittle plus an early second round pick. I think a lot of contenders would be willing to make that trade. And if you think about how TJ Hawkinson's like, you know, progressed, he's not on the same level as George Kittle, but he's taken the necessary steps up to show that he can be a higher end tight end. You know, obviously, you know, if you could trade George Kittle for Kyle Pitts, you'd do it, but I don't think many people are willing to do that anymore. Kyle Pitts has exploded onto the scene, and honestly, the only thing Kyle Pitts hasn't done this season that has blown me away is touchdowns. But those are pretty random, and we know he's a fucking gazelle and he's a monster. So he'll get there. Give him some time, guys. It'll be fine. But I think I really like that. I really like those three guys. You know, if you guys are in leagues and you're in a rebuilding position, right? And you're trying to ship off some assets that people want, not like sell high shitty assets nobody wants, like real good assets. I think Zeke is one of them. I think Cooper Kupp is obviously one of them. He's a league winner right now at wide receiver position. He's probably like number 2 on wins above replacement in terms of all across all positions. So if you can trade him away, I do think it's prudent to do so, right? If you can trade Cooper Kupp for Hollywood Brown plus a first, I think you should do that trade, right? If you're in a rebuilding team, you know, Cooper Kupp for Michael Pittman plus a first plus a second. I think these are all trades you can realistically get done. And when we look back 2-3 years down the line, look back to now, and you know, Hollywood Brown is has 2 wide receiver 1 season on the resume. Michael Pittman maybe has a couple wide receiver 2 and wide receiver 1, and then plus that first round rookie pick. Maybe you landed a Traylon Burks. Maybe you landed, you know, a Drake London, right, with that pick. So there's a lot of possibilities with these guys, and you should definitely be exploring them. And it's always tough to sell players at the top, right? Because, you know, they're good and they're proven they're really good. Right?
Exactly.
That's the thing. People are scared people are like, what if Cooper Kupp is like Randy Moss next 2 years? And that is a true what if, right? Maybe he is.
Yeah.
But it's a much greater chance that he isn't. And, you know, speaking of Cooper Kupp, OBJ to the Rams, seems like the rich keep getting richer. What are your thoughts on OBJ? You like OBJ? You don't like OBJ? Like, what are you thinking there?
I still like OBJ. Like, I don't think he's going to be much more than probably a wide receiver 3, but I think in this offense that's so designed to do well, I mean, interesting to see how much OBJ shakes that up, how much attention that takes away from Cooper Kupp in terms of the target share that he's getting right now.
Yeah.
I think OBJ, there's still some left in the tank. I think he's still super talented. Again, I'm a big Matt Harmon stan, and like even reception perception before he tore his ACL, I mean, he's still like got back to what he was looking like the year before his herniated disc. So I think that he's someone like in Dynasty right now, I'd be willing to trade like a second round pick for someone like Odell Beckham, and hoping that like he goes to a team where he could be the wide receiver 1 next year. I'm not saying he's going to be a wide receiver 1 again, but I think for like a mid to late second round pick, I'd be willing to get and hope for someone, especially in a contending team, that he could be something. Maybe not this year, but definitely next year. But I think he'll be interesting on the Rams because I think he's going to demand enough target share that it could hurt that offense a little bit. Because I think Van Jefferson's probably a better complementary piece rather than like Odell Beckham. I would compare to someone like a Russell Westbrook on the Lakers, where he's not the best fit, especially when they already have an established offense and established way of thing they do things. But because of the talent, you can't say no to it. So I think that's kind of where I stand on that. But I'm interested to see how it plays out. What about you? I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
I think Van Jefferson's dead. I don't think he was that good to begin with, but OBJ going there like totally changed things. I think the fit might actually be a little bit better, right? Because the issue with OBJ and Baker is what I'm learning is like OBJ likes to improvise on his routes,
Okay.
as a lot of top end guys I would assume do. But Baker and Stefanski like run that offense a certain way, and they expect them to be in certain places, right? That's why you see all these cut ups of OBJ being wide open and Baker not even looking at it, because that's not the style of player he is. Stafford, on the other hand, we know he's a YOLO artist. I mean, this guy's got Calvin Johnson on his team for a while, and he's willing to dice it. And he's a veteran enough player to be able to move on the fly. And I think McVay probably lends him that leash to say, do your thing. So I think the fit here will be a lot better. I think OBJ, like I agree with you. He'll probably be in that like mid to high wide receiver 3 range, but he could flirt with the wide receiver 2, because I do think he's talented enough to push Robert Woods, right? Cooper Kupp is in his own world right now. I don't think anyone's touching him, but I do think OBJ can push Robert Woods for that role. I think it'll be more of a battle between them than between him and Van Jefferson. I think Van Jefferson's dead. It's going to be 3 wide receivers. It's going to be those 3 that are kind of battling for targets.
I agree.
Yeah. All right, cool. Look, so that's all I got for everyone. So I got for you guys. If you guys enjoyed, make sure you hit the thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and hop on over to support Alex at Fresh Fantasy. So you can find that Fresh Fantasy podcast on Apple, on Spotify, on whatever you guys listen to podcasts on. Make sure you go over there, subscribe. Make sure you follow him at Alex Caruso, Caruso. All this info will be in the comments, of course. And then lastly, make sure you follow him at Fresh Fantasy on TikTok so you can get his daily videos, news breakdowns, and all that stuff. But yeah, and dude, I just want to say thanks for hopping on the channel with me. It was a fantastic getting to know you, getting to chat with you, and just breaking down some football. Keep hustling and doing your thing. Yeah, just give the viewers a shout out. I mean, anything else you wanted to add?
No, well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on. Like I was a fan of yours, but like you want a show, we can talk after, but like I was definitely blown away by your hosting skills. I think there's a lot of things just from listening to your show today that I can really take away to add to mine. So first of all, thank you. And I definitely learned a lot today. But I also appreciate you having me on. But you can find me at Alex Caruso on Twitter. Find me at the Fresh Fantasy Podcast on your favorite podcast platform. And biggest and probably most importantly, you can follow me on TikTok at fresh_fantasy. Like I said, and get all the best info that I can find personally, whether you like it or not, in a minute or less. So I will not be boring you too much, but please feel free to give me a follow on there.
Yeah, it's good stuff. Make sure you guys will check him out. And as always, I'm at Mike Me Up with 2 P's on Twitter. Holler at me on Twitter, shout at me and argue with me, call me names, whatever. Do whatever it is you want to do, and I'll try and engage with you as best as I can. And then, make sure you guys check out the patreon.com/ourpack. We're running strong over there with a lot of people, great community building up. I've dropped all my trade advice in there as I'm sending them. So you guys can see what I'm actually doing in my league. So, I'm putting money where my mouth is, so to speak. And then lastly, our good partners over at Dynasty Nerds. You can go over them, check it out. Anything you get on their site, subscription, most specifically the Dynasty GM tool, which I think is really, really cool. It helps like bring all your dynasty leagues together so you can see it all in one place. And I text with Jared Wackerly, who's heading that stuff over there on the daily, and I talked to him about like improvements and stuff they can do for the tools. They're constantly working on it. So any money you guys give them, you can best believe they are reinvesting it to make the product better. So go on over there, use the promo code Wolfpack, or just use the link below in the YouTube channel, and you guys can sign up for their cool tool there and post subscription. All right, that's all I got for you guys this time. Until next time.